The morning sun cast long shadows across the military training ground as Sarah Martinez adjusted her shooting stance. At 24, she had already earned respect among her fellow recruits, but today felt different. Commander Jake Stevens, a decorated Navy SEAL with 15 years of combat experience, watched from behind the safety line with his arms crossed. Sarah had been the only woman in her advanced marksmanship class for 3 months now. The other recruits often whispered about her background, wondering how a small-town girl from Colorado had ended up training alongside some of the military's finest shooters. What they didn't know was that Sarah had been holding rifles since she was 8 years old. Taught by her grandfather who had served in Vietnam, Commander Stevens had seen hundreds of recruits pass through his training programs. He prided himself on being able to spot natural talent within the first few days. But Sarah puzzled him. Her scores were consistently perfect, her form flawless, and her focus unshakable. Yet she never bragged or showed off like the others did when they hit their targets. The training exercise that morning was designed to test precision under pressure. Each recruit had to hit 5 targets at varying distances while wearing full combat gear and carrying a 40-pound pack. The targets were small, positioned at ranges from 200 to 800 meters, and each shooter had only one chance to make their shots count. One by one, the recruits took their turns. Most managed to hit 3 out of 5 targets, which was considered excellent for this level of training. A few hit 4, earning nods of approval from the commander. When Sarah's name was called, the range fell silent except for the distant sound of wind rustling through the trees. She approached the firing line with the same calm demeanor she always displayed. Her rifle, a standard-issue M24, seemed to become an extension of her body as she settled into position. The first target was 200 meters away, a relatively easy shot for someone of her caliber. The crack of the rifle echoed across the range, and the target snapped back immediately. The second target at 350 meters fell just as quickly. Sarah worked methodically, her breathing controlled, her movements precise. By the 4th shot, even Commander Stevens found himself leaning forward slightly, watching her technique with growing interest. The 700-meter target seemed impossibly small through the scope, but Sarah's shot found its mark without hesitation. The final target sat at 800 meters, positioned behind a natural wind barrier that created unpredictable air currents. This shot had stumped even some of the more experienced shooters in previous exercises. Sarah studied the target through her scope for nearly 30 seconds, longer than she had taken for any of the previous shots. The wind shifted slightly, causing the grass around the target to sway. Sarah made a minute adjustment to her scope, took a deep breath, and squeezed the trigger. The bullet traveled for what seemed like an eternity before striking dead center of the target. The impact was so precise that it destroyed the bullseye completely. Commander Stevens stared at the distant target through his binoculars, then looked back at Sarah, who was already standing and securing her weapon. The other recruits began murmuring among themselves, but Sarah simply waited for permission to leave the firing line. Something about her shooting went beyond mere skill or training. The way she handled the weapon, the instinctive adjustments she made for wind and distance, the absolute confidence in every shot, it spoke of experience that went far deeper than the 3 months she had been in his program. As the morning exercise concluded and the recruits began cleaning their weapons, Commander Stevens made a decision. He needed to understand where Sarah had acquired such extraordinary marksmanship skills. Her military file was surprisingly thin, mentioning only basic information about her background and education. There were no references to previous military service or formal shooting competitions. That evening, as Sarah was leaving the armory after weapon maintenance, Commander Stevens approached her. The setting sun painted the sky in shades of orange and red, and the base was quieting down for the night. Other recruits were heading to the mess hall or their barracks, but Sarah often took solitary walks around the perimeter before dinner. The commander had rehearsed several ways to start this conversation, but as he fell into step beside her, he found himself asking the question that had been bothering him all day. The directness of his inquiry surprised even him, but something about Sarah's mysterious skill demanded an equally direct approach. The question hung in the air between them as they walked along the gravel path that circled the training facility. Sarah continued walking for several steps before responding. Her eyes focused on the horizon where the last traces of daylight were fading. "My grandfather," she said simply, her voice carrying a mixture of pride and sadness. "He taught me everything I know about shooting." Commander Stevens had expected a more complex answer, perhaps a story about competitive shooting teams or specialized civilian training programs. The simplicity of her response only deepened his curiosity about this young woman who could outshoot soldiers with years of experience. Sarah stopped walking and turned to face a small memorial garden that honored fallen service members. The granite monuments reflected the fading light, and she stood quietly for a moment before continuing her story. Her grandfather, Miguel Martinez, had been a sniper in the 173rd Airborne Brigade during the Vietnam War. He had served 3 tours of duty and earned 2 Purple Hearts before returning home to Colorado in 1971. Unlike many veterans who struggled to readjust to civilian life, Miguel had found peace in the mountains outside Colorado Springs. He bought a small ranch where he raised cattle and taught local youth about hunting and firearm safety. But for his granddaughter Sarah, he had provided something much more comprehensive. From the age of 8, Sarah had spent every summer at her grandfather's ranch. What began as basic gun safety lessons gradually evolved into advanced marksmanship training. Miguel recognized something special in his granddaughter's natural ability and dedication. She had an innate understanding of ballistics, wind patterns, and the mental discipline required for precision shooting. By the time Sarah turned 16, she could consistently hit targets at distances that challenged experienced hunters. Miguel had taught her not just the technical aspects of shooting, but also the mental preparation, the patience, and the respect for the weapon that separated true marksmen from casual shooters. Commander Stevens listened intently as Sarah described her unconventional education. During school breaks, she would practice for hours each day, learning to shoot in various weather conditions and from different positions. Miguel had constructed a private range on his property that extended out to 1,000 meters, using natural terrain features to create challenging scenarios. What impressed the commander most was learning about the discipline Miguel had instilled in his granddaughter. Every shooting session began with meditation and breathing exercises. Sarah learned to control her heart rate, to find the natural pause between breaths where her body was most still. These techniques, originally developed by military snipers, became second nature to her. The training went beyond marksmanship. Miguel taught Sarah about camouflage, patience, and observation skills. She learned to read wind patterns by watching grass and leaves, to judge distances without electronic aids, and to remain motionless for hours when necessary. These skills were traditionally reserved for elite military units. Yet Sarah had mastered them as a teenager. As they resumed walking, Sarah explained that her grandfather had died just 6 months before she enlisted in the military. Miguel had been battling cancer for 2 years, but had continued training with Sarah until just weeks before his death. His final gift to her had been his personal rifle, a custom-built precision weapon that he had used during his own military service. Commander Stevens began to understand that Sarah's exceptional abilities were not the result of natural talent alone, but rather the product of years of intensive, professional-level training under the guidance of a combat veteran. Her grandfather had essentially provided her with sniper-level instruction that most soldiers never received. The conversation revealed another important aspect of Sarah's background. Miguel had been selective about sharing his military experiences, but he had been honest with Sarah about the realities of combat. He had taught her that marksmanship was not just about hitting targets, but about the tremendous responsibility that came with such skills. As they completed their circuit around the base, Commander Stevens found himself viewing Sarah's performance in a completely different light. Her composure under pressure, her methodical approach to each shot, and her humble attitude all reflected the influence of a grandfather who understood the true nature of military service. The revelation also explained why Sarah had enlisted in the military after her grandfather's death. Miguel had always spoken respectfully about his service, despite the hardships he had endured. He had instilled in Sarah a sense of duty and patriotism that went beyond mere words. Standing outside the barracks as other recruits headed inside for the evening, Commander Stevens realized he was looking at someone who possessed skills that typically took years to develop in military training programs. Sarah's unique background had prepared her for challenges that most recruits would not encounter until much later in their careers. The following week brought a new level of intensity to the training program. Commander Stevens had designed a series of advanced exercises that would push every recruit beyond their comfort zone. The course included night shooting, moving target scenarios, and high-stress situation simulations that mimicked real combat conditions. Sarah approached these challenges with the same quiet confidence she had displayed since arriving at the base. However, the other recruits were beginning to take notice of her consistent superior performance. Some viewed her abilities with admiration, while others harbored resentment about being consistently outperformed by someone they perceived as an outsider. The tension came to a head during a particularly challenging exercise that combined physical endurance with precision shooting. Recruits had to complete a 3-mile run in full gear, navigate an obstacle course, and then immediately engage targets at various distances, while their heart rates were elevated and their hands were shaking from exertion. Most of the recruits struggled with this combination of physical and mental demands. The elevated heart rate made it nearly impossible to achieve the steady breathing and precise muscle control required for accurate shooting. Several missed their targets entirely, while others managed only marginal hits on the larger scoring areas. When Sarah's turn arrived, she completed the run and obstacle course in record time. Despite the physical exertion, she seemed to recover quickly during the brief preparation period allowed before shooting began. Her first shot struck the center of a target 400 meters away, and each subsequent shot found its mark with mechanical precision. Recruit David Thompson, who had been struggling with the exercise all morning, watched Sarah's performance with growing frustration. Thompson came from a military family and had expected to excel in the marksmanship program. Being consistently outshot by Sarah had damaged his confidence and wounded his pride. After the exercise concluded, Thompson approached Sarah as she was cleaning her rifle. His comments started as backhanded compliments about her shooting, but quickly escalated into questions about whether she had received unfair advantages or special treatment. Other recruits gathered around, sensing the brewing confrontation. Sarah remained calm throughout Thompson's verbal assault, continuing to methodically clean her weapon. She had encountered similar attitudes throughout her life, particularly from men who could not accept being outperformed by a woman in traditionally male activities. Her grandfather had prepared her for such situations, teaching her that actions would always speak louder than defensive words. The situation might have escalated further, but Commander Stevens appeared and dispersed the group with a sharp command. He had observed the entire interaction from a distance and was not pleased with the unprofessional behavior he had witnessed. However, he was impressed by Sarah's composure under pressure and her refusal to be drawn into a pointless argument. That afternoon, Commander Stevens made an unusual decision. He arranged for Sarah to participate in an advanced training session typically reserved for soldiers who had completed several years of service. The exercise involved a simulated, hostage rescue scenario where precision and split-second decision-making were crucial. The scenario required the shooter to distinguish between hostile targets and innocent civilians. In a complex urban environment, targets would appear at random intervals, and the shooter had only seconds to identify friend from foe and take appropriate action. The margin for error was zero, as any mistake could result in civilian casualties in a real-world situation. Sarah studied the briefing materials carefully, asking detailed questions about the rules of engagement and the identification criteria for different target types. Her questions demonstrated a sophisticated understanding of tactical situations that surprised even the instructors who typically ran these advanced scenarios. When the exercise began, Sarah moved through the simulated urban environment with practiced stealth. She had learned these movement techniques from her grandfather, who had emphasized that a sniper's survival often depended on remaining undetected. Her progress through the course was methodical and deliberate, taking time to properly assess each situation before acting. The first target scenario presented a difficult decision: an armed figure holding what appeared to be a weapon near a group of civilians. Sarah observed the situation for several seconds, noting details that others might have missed in their haste to engage. She identified the figure as a civilian carrying a tool rather than a weapon, and correctly held her fire. Subsequent scenarios tested her ability to make rapid decisions under pressure, while maintaining the precision required to neutralize threats without endangering innocents. Each situation was designed to challenge even experienced soldiers. Yet Sarah navigated them with an accuracy and confidence that amazed the observing instructors. The final scenario was the most challenging. Multiple targets appeared simultaneously in different locations, requiring rapid engagement while maintaining situational awareness. Sarah's performance in this sequence demonstrated skills that typically took years to develop, combining tactical thinking with exceptional marksmanship abilities. When the exercise concluded, the instructors reviewed Sarah's performance with Commander Stevens. Her score was not only perfect, but her decision-making process and tactical approach showed a level of sophistication that exceeded many soldiers. With extensive combat experience, Commander Stevens began to realize that Sarah represented something extraordinary in his training program. Her combination of technical skill, tactical understanding, and mental discipline placed her in a category occupied by very few individuals. The question was no longer about her abilities, but about how to best utilize such exceptional talent in service to her country. Word of Sarah's extraordinary performance began to spread beyond the confines of Commander Stevens' training program. Senior military officials who typically paid little attention to routine recruit training started asking questions about the young woman who was breaking records and setting new standards for marksmanship excellence. Colonel Patricia Williams, the base commander, requested a private meeting with Commander Stevens to discuss Sarah's progress. Colonel Williams had served in multiple combat deployments and understood the value of exceptional talent when she encountered it. The military was always seeking individuals with the potential to serve in specialized roles that required unique skills and abilities. During their meeting, Commander Stevens provided a detailed assessment of Sarah's capabilities. He explained that her performance exceeded that of soldiers who had completed advanced sniper training programs, and that her tactical understanding demonstrated a maturity rarely seen in new recruits. The colonel listened intently, recognizing the implications of what she was hearing. Meanwhile, Sarah continued her training routine, unaware of the discussions taking place at higher levels of command. She maintained her focus on improvement, always seeking to perfect her techniques and expand her knowledge. Her grandfather had taught her that mastery was a lifelong pursuit, and that there was always something new to learn regardless of one's current skill level. The other recruits' attitudes towards Sarah had begun to evolve. While some continued to harbor resentment, others started seeking her advice and guidance. Sarah was generous with her knowledge, sharing techniques and insights that helped her fellow soldiers improve their own performance. This generosity of spirit reflected the values her grandfather had instilled in her about service and helping others succeed. Thompson, who had been one of Sarah's harshest critics, found himself in a situation where he needed her help. During a particularly difficult shooting exercise, he was struggling to compensate for strong crosswinds that were affecting his accuracy. Sarah noticed his frustration and quietly offered suggestions about reading wind patterns and making appropriate adjustments. Her advice was practical and immediately helpful. Thompson's accuracy improved dramatically, and he successfully completed the exercise that had been giving him trouble for days. This experience began to change his perspective on Sarah, as he realized that her exceptional abilities came from genuine knowledge and skill, rather than any unfair advantages. The transformation in group dynamics became evident during a team-based exercise that required coordination between multiple shooters to achieve a common objective. Sarah naturally assumed a leadership role, not through self-promotion but through the quiet competence that had characterized her approach to everything she undertook. She demonstrated an ability to assess each team member's strengths and weaknesses, assigning roles and responsibilities that maximized the group's overall effectiveness. Her tactical planning was sophisticated, taking into account factors that others had overlooked and developing contingency plans for various scenarios that might arise during the mission. The exercise was a complete success, with the team achieving their objectives more efficiently than any previous group. Other recruits began to understand that Sarah's abilities extended beyond individual marksmanship to include strategic thinking and leadership, capabilities that could benefit everyone around her. Commander Stevens observed these developments with growing respect for Sarah's character. Many exceptional individuals struggled with teamwork, either because of ego or an inability to relate to those with lesser abilities. Sarah had demonstrated that true excellence included the capacity to elevate others and work effectively as part of a larger organization. As the training program entered its final phase, Commander Stevens faced a decision about Sarah's future assignment. Standard protocol would involve placing her in a regular military unit, where she would serve alongside other soldiers with conventional training and abilities. However, he believed that such an assignment would waste her extraordinary talents and deny the military the full benefit of her capabilities. He began making inquiries about specialized programs that might be appropriate for someone with Sarah's unique skill set. These programs typically recruited from soldiers who had already proven themselves in combat situations. But Sarah's abilities suggested she might be an exception to standard procedures. The process of recommending someone for advanced programs required extensive documentation and multiple levels of approval. Commander Stevens began preparing a comprehensive report that detailed Sarah's performance, capabilities, and potential for service in specialized roles. He knew that such recommendations were rarely made for new recruits, but Sarah's situation was unprecedented in his experience. During this period, Sarah continued to focus on her training, unaware of the career decisions being made on her behalf. She approached each day with the same dedication and professionalism that had characterized her performance from the beginning. Her grandfather had taught her that a soldier's duty was to perform to the best of their ability, regardless of the recognition or rewards that might follow. The final weeks of the training program included comprehensive evaluations that would determine each recruit's future military occupation and assignment. These evaluations combined practical demonstrations of skills with written examinations and psychological assessments designed to match individuals with appropriate roles and responsibilities. Sarah's performance during these evaluations confirmed everything that Commander Stevens had observed throughout the program. Her scores were not just exceptional, but fell into categories that military psychologists typically associated with candidates for the most demanding and specialized positions in the armed forces. 3 weeks before graduation, Sarah received an unexpected summons to report to Colonel Williams's office. The message provided no details about the purpose of the meeting, leaving Sarah to wonder if she had somehow violated regulations or failed to meet expectations in some aspect of her training. As she walked across the base toward the administrative building, Sarah reflected on her journey through the training program. The months had been challenging but rewarding, providing her with new skills and perspectives that complemented the foundation her grandfather had given her. She felt confident about her performance and ready for whatever assignment awaited her upon graduation. Colonel Williams's office was larger than Sarah had expected, with walls decorated with military honors, photographs from various deployments, and maps of international locations where the colonel had served. The colonel herself was a formidable presence, with an bearing that immediately conveyed authority and experience. The meeting began with Colonel Williams reviewing Sarah's training records and performance evaluations. She asked detailed questions about Sarah's background, her motivations for military service, and her career aspirations. Sarah answered honestly, explaining her desire to serve her country and honor her grandfather's legacy through her own military service. As the conversation progressed, Colonel Williams revealed the true purpose of the meeting. Sarah's exceptional performance had attracted attention from military units that specialized in operations requiring unique skills and capabilities. These units typically recruited experienced soldiers who had proven themselves in combat situations, but Sarah's abilities suggested she might be suitable for immediate consideration. The colonel explained that such opportunities came with significant responsibilities and challenges. The training would be more intensive than anything Sarah had yet experienced, and the missions would involve risks that went beyond conventional military operations. Success in these programs required not just technical skills, but also mental resilience and unwavering commitment to the mission and fellow team members. Sarah listened carefully to the colonel's description of these opportunities, understanding that she was being offered a chance to serve in ways that few soldiers ever experienced. The thought of following in her grandfather's footsteps, albeit in a different era and context, filled her with both excitement and a deep sense of responsibility. However, Colonel Williams also explained that such assignments were voluntary, and that declining would not reflect negatively on Sarah's record or future career prospects. The military valued all forms of service, and there were many important roles that did not require the specialized skills and commitments associated with elite units. The decision was Sarah's to make, but Colonel Williams emphasized that time was limited. The specialized programs had specific recruitment schedules, and missing the current opportunity might mean waiting months or years for another chance. The colonel provided Sarah with additional materials to review and gave her 48 hours to consider her options. That evening, Sarah took a long walk around the base perimeter, thinking about the decision she faced. The opportunity represented everything her grandfather had prepared her for: a chance to use her abilities in service to her country at the highest levels. Yet she also understood that accepting would mean embarking on a path that would separate her from the conventional military experience she had originally envisioned. She thought about her grandfather's stories of his own military service, the pride he had taken in his specialized role, and the sacrifices he had made in service to his country. Miguel had never pressured Sarah to follow his path, but he had equipped her with the skills and mindset necessary to excel in such roles if she chose to pursue them. The next day, Sarah sought out Commander Stevens to discuss the opportunity Colonel Williams had presented. She valued his perspective and wanted to understand what he thought about her potential for success in specialized programs. The commander had worked with many soldiers over the years and had developed good judgment about individual capabilities and suitability for different types of service. Commander Stevens was honest about both the opportunities and challenges Sarah would face. He confirmed that her abilities were exceptional and that she had demonstrated the mental discipline and character necessary for specialized roles. However, he also emphasized that such service would demand sacrifices and commitments that went beyond those required in conventional military positions. Their conversation helped Sarah clarify her own thoughts and feelings about the decision. She realized that her grandfather had not just taught her to shoot accurately, but had instilled in her the values and mindset necessary to serve at the highest levels of military excellence. Declining the opportunity would not dishonor his memory, but accepting it would represent the fullest expression of everything he had taught her. After their discussion, Sarah felt a sense of clarity about her decision. She understood the risks and challenges involved, but she also recognized that her unique background and abilities positioned her to make contributions that few others could match. The opportunity represented not just a career choice, but a calling to serve in ways that would honor both her grandfather's legacy and her own potential. That evening, Sarah spent time writing a letter to her grandmother, explaining the opportunity she had been offered and the decision she was preparing to make. She wanted her family to understand that this choice reflected her deepest values and her commitment to serving her country with the same excellence and dedication that her grandfather had demonstrated throughout his own military career. Sarah returned to Colonel Williams' office the following morning with her decision. She had spent the night in quiet reflection, thinking about her grandfather's teachings and the path that had led her to this moment. The choice felt inevitable, as if everything in her life had been preparing her for this opportunity to serve at the highest levels of military excellence. Colonel Williams received Sarah's acceptance with a nod of approval. She explained that the next phase would involve immediate transfer to a classified training facility, where Sarah would undergo evaluation and preparation for specialized operations. The training would be unlike anything she had experienced, designed to test not just her technical skills, but also her ability to perform under the extreme stress conditions that characterized elite military operations. The transition happened quickly. Within a week, Sarah found herself at a remote facility where the training methods were more intensive and the standards more demanding than anything she had previously encountered. The other candidates came from various military backgrounds, but all had demonstrated exceptional abilities in their respective specialties. Commander Stevens watched Sarah's departure with mixed emotions. He was proud to have recognized her exceptional talents and helped guide her toward opportunities that would make full use of her abilities. At the same time, he knew that her transfer marked the end of his direct involvement in her military career, as specialized operations typically operated with high levels of security and independence. The new training program challenged Sarah in ways she had not anticipated. While her marksmanship skills remained exceptional, she now had to master additional capabilities including advanced tactical planning, close quarters combat, and sophisticated technology systems. The mental demands were as intense as the physical requirements, testing her ability to make rapid decisions under extreme pressure. Her fellow candidates initially viewed Sarah with skepticism, as her youth and relative inexperience contrasted sharply with their own backgrounds in combat operations. However, her performance during training exercises quickly earned their respect. She demonstrated not just technical competence, but also the mental toughness and tactical intelligence that characterize successful operators in specialized units. The training culminated in a comprehensive evaluation exercise that simulated real-world mission conditions. Sarah's performance during this final test exceeded the expectations of her instructors and confirmed her suitability for specialized operations. She had successfully transitioned from a recruit with exceptional potential to a qualified operator, capable of contributing to the most demanding military missions. Months later, Commander Stevens received an unexpected visitor at his training facility. Sarah had returned to the base where her military career had begun, now wearing the insignia of an elite unit and carrying herself with the confidence of someone who had proven herself under the most challenging circumstances. She had come to thank Commander Stevens for recognizing her potential and supporting her development. More importantly, she wanted to share news of her first operational deployment, which had been successful beyond all expectations. Her unique combination of skills and the values her grandfather had instilled in her had proven invaluable in situations where precision and judgment were matters of life and death. During their conversation, Sarah revealed that she had been thinking about her grandfather's influence on her military career. Miguel had not just taught her to shoot accurately, but had instilled in her the discipline, integrity, and commitment to excellence that enabled her to succeed in the most demanding military environments. His legacy lived on through her service to the country he had loved and defended. Commander Stevens reflected on the conversation long after Sarah had departed for her next assignment. Her story represented the best aspects of military service, the recognition and development of exceptional talent, the dedication to something larger than oneself, and the continuation of values and traditions across generations. Sarah's journey from a small-town girl with unusual skills to an elite military operator had been remarkable, but it was also a testament to the power of proper guidance and training. Her grandfather had provided the foundation, Commander Stevens had recognized the potential, and Sarah herself had possessed the character and determination necessary to excel at the highest levels. As Sarah returned to her unit and continued her service, she carried with her the knowledge that she was honoring not just her own potential, but also the legacy of everyone who had contributed to her development. Her grandfather's training had prepared her for excellence. Commander Stevens had opened the door to opportunity, and her own commitment had transformed potential into achievement. The question, "Who trained you?" would continue to follow Sarah throughout her military career, as her exceptional abilities set her apart from other operators. The answer would always begin with her grandfather Miguel, whose love and wisdom had shaped not just her skills as a marksman, but her character as a soldier and her dedication to serving something greater than herself. Through her service, his legacy would continue to make a difference in the world he had fought to protect.